Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the Room F today. This is the IRSA book chapter presentation. So we have three presenters for the day. We have Ibu Ludia Theresia Wambrauw from Universitas Negeri Papua. She will be presenting about availability, distribution, and price trend of strategic food commodities during the COVID-19 pandemic in West Papua. We will also have COVID-19 pandemic risk and uncertainty effect of coastal local economic welfare of remote islands of region from Mr. Wellem Anselmus Teniwut from Tual State Fisheries Polytechnic. And then the third one, we will have analyzing mobility and well-being through tweets during the pandemic, the case of Indonesian creative cities by Adiwan Fahlam Aritena from ITB, Riela Profidrianda from Waseda University, as well as Laila Zohra from Singa Perbangsa University. So speakers, today we will allow you 15 minutes of presentations, and then we will have another 15 minutes for Q&A. So again, I would like to have your focus and your concentration for the forum. If you have any double meetings, please exit the meeting so that you can pay attention to the other presenters in this particular forum. I would like to invite Ibu Ludia Theresia Wambrauw from Universitas Negeri Papua to present her paper entitled Availability, Distribution, and Price Trend of Strategic Food Commodities During the COVID-19 Pandemic. Ibu Ludia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pak Gumilang. I will share screen first. Can I allow to share my slide, please?
Yes, I think you can, Ibu Ludia. You can share the screen.
Because it's stated here that host disabled participant screen sharing.
I see. Siska, can you allow screen sharing?
Okay.
Thank you, Ibu Ludia. Thank you, Siska. Ibu Ludia, the time is yours. You have 15 minutes for the presentation.
Thank you, Pak Gumilang. Good morning, Bapak Ibu. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Today, I will presenting our paper entitled Availability, Distribution, and Price Trend of Strategic Food Commodities During the COVID-19 Pandemic in West Papua Province. So this paper divided into 7 sections: introduction, West Papua Province economy, COVID-19 spread in West Papua, availability and distribution of strategic food commodities, price trend of strategic food commodities, food strategies carried out, and the last one is conclusion. So as we know, the world is facing unprecedented global health and social economic crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is start at the beginning of the year 2020. And the COVID-19 was confirmed to have spread in Indonesia in March 2020. And the COVID-19 pandemic is not only having a major impact on the health aspect, but also affect all aspects of human life, including the economic and business sector and logistic movement. The pandemic has impact on food availability throughout Indonesia, and the facility of food distributions are becoming limited, so these are resulting in a lack of food productivity. The pandemic has an impact in agricultural sector, so we can see in here, the pandemic weakening the labor productivity. The pandemic also reduced the total of productivity. The pandemic also increased cost of trading in agricultural product, and there was spread distortion of the distribution of the agricultural product that increased the agricultural commodity prices. There also a change in the lifestyle of the community, which causes public demand as the food consumer to also change. And at the beginning of the pandemic, as we can saw from the TV, from the media, people have a stockpiling behavior. This is because they are fear of the COVID-19 and the food accessibility. The pattern of consumer spending on food has also begun to change from self-buying to transaction using digital or online platforms. This is also happened in West Papua. Before, we usually just go to the market and buying something like consumption, but at the moment, we tend to use the digital or online platform to buying food. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected the availability and distribution of food to various regions in Indonesia. And with social and regional restriction, food distribution has become weak. Stable and strategic food product must be available in sufficient quantities, meet quality standard, and a reasonable price level to maintain food affordability for the community. West Papua is an area which is not food independent. Most of the food supply in West Papua come from outside, such as Java, South Sulawesi, and North Sulawesi. It's stated here that more than 80% of food supply come from other area. The production and distribution of food logistic disruption due to the social restriction and transportation facility are some of the causes that limited food stock in West Papua. So the aims of this paper are to observe strategic food availability, distribution, and price trends in West Papua during the COVID-19 pandemic, and to analyze strategies carried out by the West Papua government. So West Papua is one province located in Papua Island, and it divided into 12 regency and one municipality with a total population of 959,617 people. West Papua province is one of the provinces in Indonesia with positive economic growth during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Bank Indonesia report that West Papua economic growth measured by its gross regional domestic product is still positive at 1.82 year-on-year and higher than the national economic growth, which is at minus 5.32 year-on-year. And this is because of the processing and mining industry, the agricultural, forestry, and fishery business fields grew even at a low level. The GP growth according to the sector activity on April to June 2020 was 0.53%. And before the pandemic in October to December 2019, it was 8.27%. The COVID-19 pandemic has also caused many businesses in West Papua to close permanently or temporarily. Many workers experience layoff and temporarily laid off, and many households also experience a decline on income. The impact of several implemented policies saw the trend of the development of COVID-19 cases in West Papua in the first 3 months tend to be slow compared to other areas in Indonesia. However, in mid-July 2020, when the new normal policy was implemented, the spread of COVID-19 to increase significantly. On 22nd November 2020, the total number of COVID-19 in West Papua was 4,669 cases. And the Health Office of West Papua report that the COVID-19 spread in several regions in Papua, but mostly in high density population areas such as Sorong City, Manokwari, and Teluk Bintuni. Data analysis of COVID-19 up to 15 November 2020 saw that West Papua ranks third after DKI Jakarta and East Kalimantan in the top 5 provinces with the highest incidence cases based on cumulative incident per 100,000 population of each province. So you can see from the diagram here that how the number of cases increased starting from August, September, October, and November 2020. And just to updating the data that from the Dinas Kesehatan Papua Barat, on 11th of July, the number of cases in West Papua is 13,460 cases. And it also reported that the number of cases per day is around 100. So as soon as the COVID-19 cases found in the province around March 2020, the government has done a number of efforts in dealing with the COVID-19, such as implementing health protocols, establishing the COVID-19 task force at the provincial and district level, issuing government policy related to teaching and learning activity and working from home. The government also reducing the working hour as well as limiting community gathering activity. So as you can see from the picture here, this is our governor also involved in socialization of using a protocol such as wearing masks. So the slogan of Papua Barat or West Papua is Papua Barat lawan COVID-19, kita orang lawan corona, kita orang pakai masker. In addition to the policy, the provincial government also provided some facilities such as personal protective equipment for the medical team. The government also determined the use of referral hospital to treat COVID-19 patients, and also other government-owned public facility provided for quarantine. The government also lead the preparation of the COVID-19 vaccine start at November 2020. But until now, many people in West Papua are still refusing to be vaccinated because of their personal reason. The provincial government also has allocated more than 197 billion to control the pandemic, to soften the impact and to support the economic activity of the community. The government also allocated budget for social safety network, around 48 billion. The government also takes a policy for the availability of several goods and anticipating price hike, which is result in higher inflation, by distributing foodstuff to people in need, such as 10 kilos of rice, 1 liter of cooking oil, 1 kilo of flour, and 1 kilo of sugar. So how about availability and distribution of strategic food commodity in West Papua? Eastern Indonesia has relatively low food independence. It is only measured by the rice commodity. The West Papua province is still very dependent on other regions for the availability of food commodity. West Papua is the second region with the lowest food independence in Indonesia after Papua province, with a food self-sufficiency percentage of 2.2%. And the food security index of West Papua is currently at 36.77, which is mean it is still a vulnerable status, and this figure occurs in normal condition, not a time of disaster. So it is tend to be low at the time of disaster. In order to meet the need of strategic food commodities or the demand of the community for staple food, it is necessary to keep them available and on stock. So this is where the bulog have an important role to provide guarantee for food security, especially food reserve for the next few months or even until the end of the year. The rice commodity is mostly distributed to West Papua, a province compared to other strategic food commodity. It can be seen that not all of the commodity that enter the province are distributed straight away to the region, but some are stored as food reserve in West Papua. So you can see from the diagram here that the number of supply for rice is increased from 2019 to 2020 because the government want to ensure that the supply for rice is enough for the whole community. The food commodity that enter the West Papua will then distributed to each region as needed. However, transportation infrastructure within the West Papua region is also the determining factor in food distribution. Even in a pandemic condition, the distribution of food commodity is expected to be carried out effectively, efficiently, and evenly in every region and city in West Papua. Now, so you can see here that, as I stated also before, that the majority of strategic food commodity in West Papua are fulfilled from outside Papua. So the existence of restriction on mobility between regions due to the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted food availability in West Papua. The distribution costs and product shortage due to the pandemic affect the price of this strategic commodity. The West Papua Province Industry and Trade reported that there was an increase in prices for several basic needs commodities such as sugar, salad, garlic, and eggs during the pandemic. So you can see from the diagram here that the price of rice and sugar do not change significantly due to the COVID-19 pandemic or in religious holiday. But this is based on the report of the Trade and Industry Department of West Papua. But if we see at the market, the price of sugar varies from 18,000 to 25,000 rupiah per kg. Also, the price of wheat flour and cooking oil do not change significantly by the COVID-19 pandemic. But this is because the role of bulog to provide sufficient rice stock for several months and conduct market operation to check the price of rice being sold so that it is not higher than the highest retail price. The bulog also conduct low-cost market activity to maintain the price stability of basic commodity, or we can usually say pasar murah. For other products such as salad and garlic, chili, and chicken eggs and broiler chicken, the price is fluctuated, different with the wheat, sugar, rice, and cooking oil, because that four strategic food are also maintaining by the bulog. But for the salad, garlic, chili, chicken egg, and broiler chicken, usually buying directly from the seller by the trader at the market. An increase in garlic and shallot price in West Papua are because garlic are imported from China, but also supplied from Surabaya, while shallot are distributed from Nusa Tenggara Barat, Surabaya, and Sulawesi, South Sulawesi by trader directly. For example, in here, the price of shallot increased just before Idul Fitri and lasts until July 2020. In Manokwari, in May, June, and July, has reached price 150,000 per kg, and in Sorong has reached its price 100,000. The chili also increased, and it peaked on May to June 2020. This is because ships are not being able to enter port in West Papua. For example, the price of chili in Sorong, it reached 140,000 to 200,000 rupiah per kg. And in Bintuni and Pak, the small chili prices were 120,000 to 100,000 respectively in July 2020. Chicken and egg prices only slightly increased because the majority of people in West Papua live in coastal area and consume more fresh fish more often than meat. What is the strategy carried out by the government? The West Papua government, for the first time, held meeting with 32 food distributors in West Papua to determine the readiness of this distributor in ensuring the availability of special food stocks such as rice, sugar, and cooking oil. The government also, through technical institutions, have a strategy such as West Papua Province Industry and Trade Office. They maintaining the stability of strategic commodity prices during this pandemic by conducting market operation together with the regional inflation control team. They also monitoring the availability of staple food and sugar stock and their distribution. The office also maintaining a balance between supply and demand so that the price increase do not occur. For the food security service of West Papua, they conducting program to encourage people to optimize food crop cultivation and also maintain food security in the region and try to increase various resources and funds to finance agricultural sector activities. For Bulog optimizing the absorption of farmers' rice for government reserve to maintain price stability and community social assistance program. Bulog also cooperating with other stakeholders, in this case, the Ministry of Agriculture and state-owned enterprises or BUMN in the distribution and supply to meet the food need of the community in the deficit stock area. Bulog also carrying out the program to ensure the availability of rice stock for community needs during a pandemic for at least the next 3 months. And Bulog also coordinating with district and provincial government to provide basic food packets assistance to communities in need. Our governor also has urged the local community to switch to local food and to utilize or optimize their land to plant and consume local food commodities such as sweet potato, cassava, taro, and sago to reduce dependency on foreign products. So the conclusion of this paper are the COVID-19 pandemic has severe impact on every aspect of life, such as health, education, economy, and infrastructure. The social restriction policy to terminate the spread of COVID-19 virus has resulted also in changes to production, supply, distribution, and prices of strategic food commodity throughout Indonesia, including West Papua. And the West Papua provincial government has many efforts in supporting the health sector in handling the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as managing its impact on the economic and society. These efforts are so far still constrained by inadequate infrastructure facility in the area, distribution of social protection program, and support for the business work through regional economy recovery program and accelerated government spending. COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted food availability and distribution, including in West Papua, where most of the staple food needs come from outside the region. Regarding strategic food commodity in West Papua, a number of conclusions can be drawn, such as First, in spite of the implementation of PSBB, the availability of rice with flour and cooking oil is relatively adequate, and they seem to be well distributed throughout West Papua province. The prices so far has been relatively stable compared to those of other strategic food commodities. Second, price of chicken and eggs, sugar, shallot, and garlic, as well as chili have fluctuated, but tend to increase during the COVID-19 pandemic. The increase in price of this commodity, on the one hand, is due to the lack of stock from outside West Papua, and there has been an increase also from the household demand for stock due to the excessive concern about the scarcity of the food stock. Third, measures to anticipate the impact of COVID-19 on the availability and stability of food prices have been implemented by the West Papua government through the related institution to ensure that facilities and assistance in all food lines from production to consumption run properly. It, however, remains to be seen whether people in West Papua can access this food commodity at appropriate amount, time, and price till the end of the COVID pandemic. I think that's all my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Ludia. I think that was an excellent presentation, and I learned a lot from the dynamics of food distribution as well as food supply in West Papua during the COVID-19 pandemic. Very interesting. So I would like to give the opportunity first to Mr. Wellem for questions to Ibu Ludia. Please, Mr. Wellem.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ludia. West Papua, like most of eastern region Indonesia, we really have a lack of dependency in food security due to the fact that we really rely on the Java or Southeast, South Sulawesi and other region to provide a daily need to our consumption. So, because I see in your presentation that that the data that you show is only show in 2020, then the pandemic already almost 1.5 years. So there's an empirical condition that really disrupt the strategic food security that the local government, or I mean the governor and every regional in West Papua issue a policy to tackle this disruption, especially during the time where the PPKM emergency being imposed in Java Island, which is that the main source of our food supply. So maybe you can really share with us the recent policy that really help the regional up there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wellem. I think that's an excellent question. Ibu Ludia, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Wellem. So the paper is written last year. So the data actually we gathered from the related institution from 2019 and 2020. So like you say, that there must be a lot of change since it's already a half year away from the first when we collect the data. But the government still have the same effort to beat the pandemic. And as we know at the moment, in West Papua, in Sorong and Manokwari, the government implemented the PPKM. And from the 15 area outside Java and Bali, Kota Sorong and Kabupaten Manokwari are the 2 areas in Papua who has to implement the PPKM because of the number of COVID-19 cases increased significantly. Like I said before, that in West Papua now, each day is around 100 cases. So the new information for the government strategy is from the Dinas Ketahanan Pangan. They allocated budget for every village for the food security, and this is come from the Special Autonomy Fund. With the scheme, the name of the scheme is Prospect, and the other scheme is the government also gives stimulant for business group around 75 million I mean, for them to be, how to say, to survive in the pandemic. But in general, the policy are still the same with the previous one.
Okay, thank you so much, Ibu Ludia. I actually have several, questions and discussion points for Ibu Ludia. However, since we have to move on to the other two presenters, Ibu Ludia, I would like to congratulate you for the book chapter written for IRSA, and actually look forward to seeing your future work, particularly to extend the data, for the analysis to be extended to the end of 2020 as well as 2021. I think there are several important lessons learned from your analysis. And I actually would like, West Papua as well as regions in the eastern part of Indonesia to improve locally sourced food commodities, because I think that's going to be the key to improve the resilience, particularly during the crisis. Again, thank you and congratulations, Ibu Ludia. And I think we can now move forward to our second presenter of the day. So the second presenter of the day will be Mr. Wellem Anselmus Teniwut. Mr. Wellem is going to present his chapter entitled COVID-19 Pandemic Risk and Uncertainty Effect on Coastal Local Economic Welfare of Remote Small Islands region. Mr. Wellem is from the Tual State Fisheries Polytechnic, and I'm going to provide you for about 15 minutes of presentation, and I'm going to give the first opportunity for the Q&A session for Pak Adiwan, and then if we have more time, we will provide Ibu Ludia with the opportunities to ask questions to Mr. Wellem. Mr. Wellem, the floor for the next 15 minutes is yours, please.
Okay. Wait. Okay. Thank you for having me. It is truly an honor for me because I'm from the eastern part and very small uh, university or education institution in Indonesia, and so it's an honor for me. And first of all, I would like to thank Professor Budi Sudarmo to give me a chance to believe in me to write my chapter. And my name is Wellem Anselmus. I'm from Tual State Fisheries Polytechnic, Indonesia. I'm located in the southeast part of Maluku province, so we are much closer to Australia than to Jakarta or maybe Java Island. So that's how remote we are. And today I will present my chapter with title COVID-19 Pandemic Risk Toward Coastal Community Economic Welfare Remote Small Island Region. Uh, this is first of all, I would like to share some funny thought that I have that I thought that by the time I presented this chapter on IRSA, I thought that the COVID pandemic will be over. So we just share it as a our past experience. But as of right now, we're still in the middle and it's getting worse. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed feeling and to present the kind of paper in the kind of situation. So first of all, I would like to present the current condition prior to the pandemic on the economic cycle, the local economic activity in our region. Because due to the fact that we are very remote island, uh, the closest big city in our region is Ambon City that have to took like 2 nights via ship and 4 hours via plane. So we really remote island, and in here even before pandemic, because our region is a small island region, so most of people here live in coastal area. Therefore, they are really relying on fisheries, especially fisheries and agriculture to support their economic welfare. And because and because the coastal community here not really have like a large scale of agriculture or fisheries activity. So maybe as we said, semi micro scale because they just like they doing the activities in the in the traditional way. So the sustainability in uh, uh, supply, either for quality or quantity, is still lacking, and that would cause the law of multiplier effect on their economic. So even before the pandemic, we're still in the lie or in the really vulnerable situation, especially in our local economy. And for the demand in here, because there's no large manufacturer or large office in here, so the constant demand is from local government employee, either for civil servant, armies, or anyone that have a constant wage each month. So we the local economic cycle in here really work in the fine line between welfare and well in the almost fall to a cliff of chaos in here in terms of economy. And if we feed from a geographical standpoint, as I mentioned before, that we really are a Rhode Island. If we can see here that we do look closer to Australia than to uh, our big city, which is Jakarta. So if I wrote another day in the column that stated that there is a hierarchy in islands in Indonesia. The first tier, which is of course Java, and then Sulawesi, Sumatra, Kalimantan, Papua, then us small islands region Indonesia. But in the pandemic, we also we in fact have the the advantage that because the people in Jakarta or in big city Indonesia really don't have an access into our region, then the pandemic starts slowly to take an effect in our region. So, uh, but as of right now, there's a start growing of the COVID cases, but it take a while to reach our region. So in my point, this is a problem because when the Java it's in the midst or in almost collapse in the healthcare system, then we have to take care of ourselves. So I said it in my column that we are like a sitting duck that ready to be sought by the pandemic chaos here. So uh, that's from our region, and now if we view it broadly, internationally and globally, that COVID pandemic uh, already have for most of economy around the world, around the globe, especially Indonesia, because just last week the World Bank already lower our grade based on our gini ratio, that we are now a lower middle income. So that's a problem because the government used to juggle between economic and healthcare. So we are suffer both. So maybe the government need to revisit how they feel or how they deal with this pandemic. So based on that, my objective of this study is to identify the risk of associated COVID-19 pandemic in our region, and maybe can serve as the lesson to the the government or the central government to deal with the same uh, to deal with the COVID pandemic in the same characteristic, which is maybe in the Bangka Islands or the in the Saye or other small islands in Indonesia to deal with the pandemic, especially related to their policy to deal with the local economic activity and also at the same time the healthcare. So by doing so, I'm using the multi criteria disease analysis, which is the hybrid one. I'm using part of analytic method process and TOPSIS with the addition of fuzzy logic to identify the risk that really can occur, especially related to the local economic in our origin. By doing so, I'm using a set of categories of respondents. First one is a local business actor, and the local expert from the non-local business actor, which is the researcher in micro-industry economic, the retailer owner, the supplier, the largest supplier, and also the bank worker for to wait on my uh, study. So there, this is the expert that I'm using to serve as a exponent to wait on my study. The study conducted from July to 2020, and there's a funny story in here because at the first time uh, I'm conducting a field interview with the local uh, 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 local economic actors in here, which is the farmers and fishermen in two local markets in our region. They take it as insult when I'm using a mask because they don't want answer my question because I'm using a mask because they believe that they don't have the virus and they just like they take it as insult. So I kind of being pushed away. So that's maybe our funny story that we will tell our future colleague that the dynamic on doing a study in the middle of the pandemic here. So my result here from the first part of MCDM, I found from there from five cluster here, the most influential one is the government policy, of course, because this is the kind of disaster. So when disaster happen, the significant or the most stakeholder that really needs to step up to help the societies, obviously the government, especially here. So and because prior to the pandemic, coastal community here is still living in the poverty line. Like I would say so, the economic stimulus will help them a lot, really, especially the like tax waiver, and it's really help the local farmers and local fishermen because they really uh, based on my interview with them. So that's what happened. And for the based on the weight on the cluster, I calculate the topsis. I found that the high risk that really could happen here that sadly already happened twice, which is the low daily needs for like almost couple weeks from in before the Christmas day in December and after uh, Ramadan, the one of Ramadan, because suddenly we cannot find the potato. Suddenly we could find the cow meat. We could find the gas for cooking it. So it's really happening. Even though it only happened for short period of time, but that's really happening. So I'm like kind of feel weird because my study proved it to be right, but also not in the way that I really want to. So and also the second one is social conflict. It is all almost happen every week in here because some fields like they're conducting their own lockdown. So that feelings in the neighbor have to take another route to stop to reach the city. So that route create some of the social conflict, that small social conflict here. So if that, so this so this is really uh stated that the central and regular government need to really step up their game to really make sure that supply for our daily needs in here really uh, run smoothly, and also especially the hawks in for asymmetric information, it's really caused spark of social conflicts here. So yeah, I'm hoping that it is really stop that this risk will not happen in the future. And this is uh, also the ill here because the most of buyer in to local markets are from government employee, and most of government employee now have a different kind of different kind of expense that not happen in before pandemic. As for example, me, I'm a lecturer, so I need to buy my mic, my camera, my lighting, my Zoom premium. So expense for everyone already have already take the part of the expense that we used to do before pandemic. So that caused the economic cycle in our region become start to really decline since the first case of COVID-19 in our region. So this is the current situation. Like, I kind of sad that say that this is still in this situation because basis of customer the first one is messaging customer purchasing behavior, number of visited logman is really slight, very significantly decreased since the before the pandemic, and also number of farmers and customers significantly decreased until now because they think that some of them think that even if we bring our commodity to local market, the the price sometimes go high, sometimes go low, and the number of local visitors to local market is still uh, limited is limited. So they, because this is the perishable commodity, so they find it it's waste of time to bring their commodity to local market. And also this logistic disruption, especially from our other region to our region, because when every time Java Island imposed the lockdown or PPKM or any kind of restriction, we hear okay, what happened, so we, yeah, okay, just we just wait something to happen that really will hamper our economic activity. And also the price differ from time to time, depend on the supply. Okay, so the for the question, there are five clusters that I thought that the most influential cluster is government policy, and our study also have a weakness because when the risks will change, well, the government change their policy, so it will gray up. It will happen, or the possibility of the risk will increase if the policy of the central or regular government may be wrong or maybe not really precise to take on the situation. And also, I have uh, also have uh, 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 my 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 uncle is the vice regent of this region, and I have told him about this, and I told him that we need to plan to really prepare for the worst case scenario that will happen. So I don't know, maybe I that is my already my responsibility to tell him. Then after that, I can just wait and see what they will do when this thing still happen or the pandemic still happen. Okay, thank you for me. Tabi Hormat from Tual, from Tual. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wellem. I think that's an excellent presentation, and definitely I learned a lot about the issues faced by local fishermen, particularly in the coastal areas. I think it's something that definitely is relatively overlooked relative to the other issues in the more central areas in Indonesia. And so I think having a knowledge on the issues on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic into the local fishermen. I think it's going to be very, very useful and then very valuable for local policymakers and as well as the central policymakers. So I do have several follow-up questions and discussions for Mr. Wellem. However, I would like to give the first opportunity to Mr. Adiwan for the Q&A session. Pak Adiwan, the time is yours.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, moderator. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Wellem. I think it's a very interesting presentation. However, I would like to ask you about how, looking at your resource persons, which are mainly from the business entrepreneurs and also other stakeholders, how do you see that their expertise could inform you on how, for instance, looking at potential of social conflict or potential of risk, because I know their expertise are more on the economic or businesses. So how do you gather their knowledge also on social conflicts? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. Okay, so as I previously mentioned in my presentation, that I have two set of categories of respondent. The first one is the local economic, which is also the coastal community in our region, and also the non economic actors. So I can have a both sides of the their perception, so I can properly weight up my study. So I have the empirical measure from the coastal communities, and also have the very expert that really know their stuff to weight and to balance my study. So that's really that my answer. So that's it.
Okay, so just to be clear, so the resource person in on social conflict will have much higher weight compared with the information from business or entrepreneurs.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. 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 It's because by the time I'm doing that in the middle of the first case in our region, it's already a conflict, because some of the region some of the villages in here like impose their own restriction, and like banish people that really not in part of their village. So it really at the first of the pandemic, it's really in chaos in here. So maybe because the studies conducted in last year, so that's the case.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Pak Adiwan. Thank you so much, Mr. Wellem. Just a very quick question before I move on to the next speaker. Mr. Wellem, can you say something about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the sustainability of fisheries and the Maluku regions? Definitely due to the lower demand of fishery products, there's going to be lower extraction from the sea. However, at the same time, there could be other factors that could be affecting, the supply of fisheries in the Maluku region. So I think it would be nice for you to comment about the potential impact on the sustainability.
So, like fishery sector in here, it actually doing very well compared to the other. But the problem is the supply chain or the logistic from our region to the Java or the like or Makassar Island or so the Makassar. So uh, we uh, as a previous submitted by previous Ministry of Fisheries that are already being detailed by KPK, that fisheries is in here is really thrive during the pandemic. But the problem is the disruption in supply chain here. So the sustainability is fisheries in the region in terms of the supply is okay because we have the coastal community, we have the tool, we have the gear, fishing gear, anything, and etc. But after we catch the fish, we cannot sell the product to the uh, uh, Surabaya or Makassar in time because it took like 10 to 20 days before the pandemic, and it took longer. So because due to the perishable characteristics of fisheries, so it is really a problem. So it is easy to fix the coastal community, especially in our region or especially in Maluku, because we only need like a really good tol laut. So like tol laut. So then we will be fine because we have all the resources and all the human sources. So natural and human resources in here. So it's fine. Because the problem is the logistic and disruption in supply chain between islands in our country that really disrupt our fisheries sector. Maybe that.
Thank you, Mr. Wellem. Again, thank you so much and congratulations for the chapter published in IRSA book. I think it was an excellent research. And again, it will provide opportunities for local region policy makers as well as people in the central policy making to understand the COVID-19 impact on the coastal areas. Very valuable. Pak Adiwan, I think we can now move to your presentation. So we will have the third and final presentation of the day. Pak Adiwan is going to be presenting his work on analyzing mobility and well-being through tweets during the COVID-19 pandemic, the case of Indonesian creative cities. Pak Adiwan is from the Institut Teknologi Bandung, and he is co-authoring with Riela Profidrianda from Waseda University, as well as Laila Zohra from Singapore Bangsa University. Pak Adiwan, you will have 15 minutes to present your book chapter, and then from there we can go and do the Q&A. Pak Adiwan, the time is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Moderator. I will share a screen. So good morning. My name is Adiwan, and together with Rila Profidriandra from Waseda University and Laila Zora from Singapore Bangsa University, I would like to present our chapter on analyzing the correlations between restricted mobilities and subjective well-being through social media during the COVID-19 pandemic, with the case in Bandung and Surakarta. This is our outline. First, I will discuss the introduction and the background of the research. Then on the general discussion on the both cities and our data and methodology, our analysis and conclusion. So first, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the government has been forced globally to perform various lockdown types. In various literature, they show that city-scale lockdown with mobility restriction has disturbed individual well-being, including boredom, health, and wealth worries, as well as depression. And based on that previous research, we try to examine on how the lockdown in various locations, especially in Bandung and Surabaya, on its mobility and well-being using the Facebook movement and Twitter data during the partial lockdown between March and June 2020. So this study is conducted between two cities, and both cities are known as a creative and cultural cities with a similar social and economic structure. So the statistical agency data shows that in both cities, the largest population demographic are between 16 and 44 years old, which include about 49% and 48% of each cities respectively. So this also shows that this productive age are also the most users of social media. So by using this approach, we could capture the general public from both cities. Meanwhile, in terms of economic structure, the ICT industry contributes about 13% in both cities into its total gross regional domestic product, or GRDP. Bandung itself implemented the partial lockdown, PSBB, and it was extended severally from May to June 2020, replacing the previous PSBB. And second, Surakarta, on the other hand, it could not provide the or applied the PSBB because they could not afford for social safety budget. So they implement the extraordinary event or kejadian luar biasa, which has a different with PSBB, which is there are no street closing or a nighttime curve. First, we use the Facebook data movement range to explore the proportion of people staying within their resident neighborhoods for an entire day. And second, we also collect Twitter data using hashtags of PSBB, di rumah aja, and di rumah saja. This is using the website to examine which hashtags are the most used during the period, and we receive 4,400 tweets in Bandung with that hashtag, and only about 1,000 tweets in Surakarta. Tweets are analyzed in order to investigate users' respondent to policies and its surrounding environment, and we use the recently developed natural language processing. Our data shows that in Bandung, the early lockdown period resulted increase of people that stay in their location or in their house up to 39% compared with the previous period, which is January to March 2020 before the lockdown. While after the new normal phase, the number of people that stay at home it declined to only about 24% higher than previous before the lockdown. In Surakarta, on the other hand, the number of people, the ratio of people that stay in one location are relatively lower than in Bandung, which is about 30%. And after the new normal, only about 60% higher than previously. This shows that the mobility in Surakarta are still higher than in Bandung during the pandemic. On the other hand, our tweet data suggests that there are various topics, including informations such as their response or their feelings about the stay at home and their eating and also fasting, because it also the data also collect the data during the fasting month. Our second topic in Bandung also concerned with a lockdown, and the third is more on the government's regulations, including their task force, policies to lockdown, and reminders to obey health protocols. In Surakarta, however, we found a relatively different topics. First, the most one is on health and stay at home and also social distancing, while another topic was related with studying at home, while a third topic was more on fasting during the Ramadan. Oops. So from this short chapter, we can see various findings. First, in terms of mobility, the Surakarta rate of movement remains slightly higher compared to Bandung. There's also identified partial lockdowns impact where there are more positive sentiments in Surakarta compared with Bandung. This is understandable and considering that Bandung applied a more restricted lockdown compared with Surakarta. In Surakarta, people are more pronounced with health topics, including love, missing someone, health, eat, and hope. While in Bandung, they are more interested with the regulations, including concerns about extension from the lockdown, reminders of health protocols also. So our study proposed several policy implications, which include the government should recognize policy impact to citizen well-being, and they also should be customized with technology-based data analysis to understand the impact of their policies on urban health. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you so much, Pak Adiwan. I think this is a very interesting study. And again, I think for us at the universities and at campuses, it's very important for us to keep updated on the current technology and how we can leverage the current technologies to collect data, to collect very much important data, to do analysis. And I think this is something that is currently underutilized, for research in the Indonesian context. And I encourage people and then researchers to follow the path of Pak Adiwan and his colleagues to improve data collection methods via virtual methods during the COVID-19 pandemic. Just a very quick follow-up question, Pak Adiwan. Have you tried, to do any correlational analysis, between the share of COVID-19 transmission to the population, and then the type of responses given in these tweets? For example, I would suppose that for individuals who are in a very much high transmission area, or the red zones or like the black zones, they will be more stressed out. There could be a severe impact on the psychology as well as on the mental health. However, for individuals in the less impacted area, perhaps due to the a more flexible mobility, they will be able to get the psychological well-being better. So I think that's an interesting analysis to look at if you haven't done so. I think for a follow-up working paper, for example. And then another one is to actually understand the impact of the PPKM that is currently being implemented, or perhaps the previous PSBB implemented by the government. I think it will be quite interesting to see whether there are any changes in the perception, or perhaps the psychological as well as the health well-being of individuals before and after the PPKM. And then you can also compare it between the high transmission area and then the low transmission area. So in that way, I think it will be interesting to tease out any effect of the PPKM on the mental well-being of individuals. I think this is something that is very useful. And I think for the policy responses, one of the things that the government needs to think about is to provide such as a hotline, or for example, a chat line that could be accessed for the general public, just in case that they feel they need some, psychological support, or like mental well-being, mental health support during the COVID-19 pandemic. I think we're going to go through the pandemic for some months in the future. I think it will be a nice infrastructure to have. Pak Adiwan, that is my comment. So perhaps before we go into Ibu Ludia, or perhaps Pak Wellem, Pak Adiwan, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Pak Moderator. I think your suggestion is very useful for us to conduct any follow-up study. Although we tried to do that, but then the problem is with Indonesia data, the Twitter data does not provide specific coordinates. So we need to determine which area and its distance from specific areas. So for instance, from the case of Bandung and Surakarta, we used the alun-alun as the focal point, and then we determined that the city or the CBD area of Bandung is only about 20 kilometers from the alun-alun of Bandung, and Surakarta only about 10 or 15 kilometers. So that describes that the data that I collected are from the city center of each city. But then if we are looking at from like you suggested, like black zone or maybe red zone, so maybe we could determine which area as the focal point, and then from there we can determine the distance maybe within 3 or 5 kilos as the high transmission area. Thank you for your suggestion.
Okay, very well, Pak Adiwan. I would like to open the opportunity for Ibu Ludia if you have any questions for Pak Adiwan.
Thank you, Pak Gumilang. Pak Adiwan, my question is almost the same with Pak Gumilang. I just wondering whether you, how you correlated between the government policy, for example, the Bandung government implemented PSBB and the Surakarta government implemented kejadian luar biasa. Is there any relation with the number of cases in both area? And the second question is just like I'm really interesting because this is like a new method, like using media social as a source of information. Can you just share the difficulties of using media social as the source of data for the research? Thank you. I think that's all, Pak Gumilang. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ibu Ludia. Pak Adiwan, would you like to respond that right away?
Yes, thank you, Bu Ludia. We do not correlate this with the number of cases because we only look at the topics or the the main ideas or topics that the tweet data that we collected. Although I think it's also possible to look at that, but we could not determine the number of cases, for instance, with the well-being of people. But that could be additional or a follow-up study also. And the problem with using this as a new source data is that first, of course, it is very difficult to determine or to collect or to classify well-being, health issues with the topic that we get. It's very qualitative. Although I see that now from the statistics, there are several methodology to help to classify this, but I think that we'll need additional methodology and capacity to analyze that. And second is that we also need to improve my own capacity on skills in terms of coding to collect more data and maybe the statistical analysis to classify the data that we have collected. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We still have time. So
Maybe,
Mr. Wellem, if you want to raise questions, please.
Yeah. Okay, this is very interesting study because I kind of familiar with the text mining and data mining. Maybe as a suggestion, maybe Ms. Adewan and team can consider using a text mining and to map like a really hot issue that really happening when the government is a policy. So they can really map the psychological and maybe the hot topic that really happening when every time the government impose its policy. Because I have already tried a few study back then before last year on this kind of matter too, but I focus on the ecotourism in eastern part of Indonesia using a tweet, and I'm using a rapid miler to map the hot issue and topic that really happening in social media. Maybe that's all the suggestion, sir. Thank you, Mr. Gumilang.
Thank you, Mr. Wellem. Over to you, Pak Adiwan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wellem. I think the policy itself would determine the feeling and then also the well-being of the population itself. But then again, I think we also need to capture the period of impact also. So maybe only after 2 or 3 days the policy implemented, then there are well-being and then problems with the people that are captured from the policy could be analyzed, I think. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pak Wellem. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for the amazing 3 presentations. We do learn a lot from the book chapters, and I think there are, rooms for improvements on the current book chapter, and then that improvement could be a topic for future working paper. I do encourage you to still focus, on the topics, and then extend the analysis to capture the more recent policies in the context of coastal regions, for example, or the context of West Papua, as well as for the context of Java. I think that's going to be quite interesting. And again, there are lessons learned in the 2021 relative to the first months of the COVID-19 pandemic back in 2020. And so again, I would like to congratulate Ibu Ludia, Mr. Wellem, Pak Adiwan, for the amazing book chapter, and I think it's a important step into the next research agenda. Thank you so much, and I would like to apologize for any issues in this session, but I do personally feel that I learned a lot from everyone. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing everyone in the rest of the sessions. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pak Gumilang. Thank you, everyone.